stuff in the background.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're now live on YouTube. So just
Cool.
just so you know, I'll turn on Facebook again in a minute, but yeah. But this is great. Like I said, I wanted to be, we've had you on, but I don't think we've really had the, hey, part of this is career path modeling, and like, how did you get to where you are? So I like having,
Yeah. No,
just a little bit of extra.
I'll flesh that out a little bit more. That is probably an interesting story.
Well, and it's, everyone follows a different path to get to where they're going, and it's always nice to see, hey, someone took a pretty circuitous path to a pretty cool place. Check it out.
Yeah, and it's kind of, which do you value more, the product or the process? So it's like, well, life is that path. Where you are right now is really just still part of that path. It's not like a destination. I'm sure there are quotes about that.
Okay, YouTube is working. Ethan did a whole bunch of updates, so I was a little like, okay, how do I get this working here with the changes? But it seems to be up and functional, I think. Let's see. And it was working. Yes, okay. YouTube's live. I'm not going to worry about, oh, and it's working on the home site. Excellent. Well, that's fine and dandy. All right. I am going to turn on the Facebooks, share to a group or two, and then we will get going here.
All right.
It's like the rate of change in technology, it's always been rapid, but lately it gets so. I live streamed 3 weeks ago.
You know what's going to be
a little bit, it's a little bit different. So
like, you talk about this in like a lot of things, are like institutions have like a certain amount of rot, like they fall apart because you have a founder who starts something, who's like a visionary, and he or she like gets this thing going and growing off the ground, and that's the person who knew how to build it from nothing into something. And then after a while, right, when that founder is gone and you have people following, they know now don't know anymore how that happened, how to build it from nothing into something. So they either just kind of feed off of its carcass into the indefinite future, or continue to like advance it or modify it in different ways. But I think about that relative to, like you're saying, to technology change, in the sense that we're moving so rapidly into AI and machine learning that shortly, like obviously, like how many people know how to build every component in a computer up to the level of a computer? That's a small handful of people. Like people can build computers from parts, right? And there's like a greater number of people that can do that. But like all the way up, like a supply chain and like that's interesting. And so perpetuate that further down the road, and imagine like, okay, you're struggling with like, oh, I got to figure out Facebook and YouTube. And that's still something we have to do. You have to figure that out. But that's got an expiration date as well.
Well, and that's its own skill at this point, right? It's no longer, I know how to use Facebook. It's, I know how to figure out how to use whatever they've done to it this week. So
yeah, exactly. And
it's
Facebook,
no longer, oh, I'm trained on Excel. I can do
Facebook ads
spreadsheets.
account as well. Exactly. I'm going through a training right now, and I'm like learning all the next level of Facebook business manager or ads manager stuff. But how long does that go on for? I think that's got a pretty fast expiration, because as soon as you have suitable AI, why would I ever do that? I'd just talk to my AI. I'd say, AI, here's what we're looking to accomplish. Find the most effective route to get there.
Absolutely. As a musician and a content creator, it's like I spend almost half my time just figuring out where to put the content these days, as opposed to actually thinking about how to make it.
So what happens like a generation into AI where now nobody knows how to do anything? Because
That's I mean,
and
there's
robotics for that matter as well. So a generation to AI and robotics, and now
yeah.
nobody knows how to do anything.
I feel like there's multiple Isaac Asimov books that's its entire premise. Solaria, I think is one where it's like COVID, it's like whole COVID world. Everyone's in their own bubbles and planets, and no one actually meets each other, and no one knows how to do anything. But fortunately, I'm chatting with you tonight. It's, just past the hour, and you fortunately still know how to do things. We're in that liminal period.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about how I'm a servant to that force anyway that's heading in that direction.
All right, I'm gonna take a sip of tea, and then we'll get rolling here.
Cool. What do I want? I think I'm going to pour a beer. We'll do that with you.
This TechTonic TV that we're doing started back in the day as TechTonic, as an event out, and when COVID hit, it was
I'll have a gin and TechTonic.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how can we keep this energy of exploring cool ideas going? And it became TechTonic TV. So I think it's only fitting. All right. Hello, Nevada County. I'm David Clark Carroll with the Nevada County Tech Connection. This is our monthly speaker interview podcast, TV, what have you series called TechTonic Tuesday TV. We're on a project of the Nevada County Economic Resource Council, and we kind of look at a little bit of everything, because in 2022, tech and business are interchangeable at this point. If you're doing business without tech, you're challenged. So in kind of the idea that almost everything is our purview, we've looked at stuff like hospital imaging equipment. We've talked to the Center for the Arts folks about just the crazy new stuff in that building, which is some of the new advances coming are just so cool, and seeing places really become early adopters almost, thanks to companies like Telestream right here in the community, who's also folks we've talked to. Now tonight, we're real pleased to have back on Jacob Griscom of lately R&B Communications, although we're going to talk a little bit about his career path, because I found it fascinating when we were chatting, just prepping for this now. And he's also involved with the Nevada County Business Network, which is a real cool group that's meeting every Thursday at noon at the Realtors Association up there on.
It's like
I have the name of the
Crown Point.
Yeah,
Point Circle.
It's up there near Peaceful Valley, and in that whole land of places where people go to have
Pines, right?
It's the place where people go to have space for their business. Basically, we've seen a lot of really cool local businesses really grow and develop out there, and that's where the ERC offices are as well. Now, right. I want to start things off a little bit talking about, you work for R&B Communications now. We've got you on to talk a little bit about workflow automations and kind of some more granular things that businesses might find helpful. But we also like to look at, how did you get to be in this position where you can offer this advice and expound on these ideas? And I'm not sure why I thought R&B was your company, but it was founded by Ray and Brad in 2002. So
yeah, like the owners are Ray Anderson and Brad Borgogno, and then I'm leading it with them. And like with any company, the founders are around for a while, and then they're in their 50s, and they're trying to like, well, what do they want to see happen with this next? And if you ever read the book Good to Great, like if you want a company to outlive the founders, take setting up a structure and a system so that it can be progressively led by other people, that's not just dependent there. So we're in that process, and I'm a big part of that process. And so, you know, R&B is very much mine, as well as other people that are stepping into this role of like leading it into the next chapter.
I think it's such a cool point to bring up, where I think historically, you know, there's the whole idea of the apprentice, the journeyman, and you still see that in the trades, but it's a concept that has its role in the corporate office as well. You know, passing along that institutional knowledge to that next generation of leaders to keep that business going. And it's just so cool that you're getting to participate in that process and really take over and help craft how it's going to look in the future. But you know, you've done a variety of different things over the years, including some other cool startup things. I'd love to talk a little bit about the startup agency you were working with before you came on to R&B, and kind of how you got to that point in your career, because you were talking about some pretty cool stuff that I more or less could follow. But
it's funny when you kind of give a path and you're like, well, where should you start? And it's like in the beginning. And I actually think in the beginning is kind of relevant, because I was reflecting on that. I did a trip with my boys, you know, over the summer, that involved like stopping back by my childhood home in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And there's a road, like a little road in the Santa Cruz Mountains off of Zayante, called Griscom Way, like my last name. There's only one house on that road, but it has a dedicated road, and it is my childhood home. And it was named that because my parents were the first one to build out on that road, so they also got to name it. So it took our last name. And I went and visited that house. That was like when my parents first got it, it was a cabin out in the woods with no running water and no electricity. And they brought me back home from San Jose hospital, and I was like in my dad's sock drawer and like that. And so I think that's cool to kind of get like your upstream, like, okay, who are the people that I come from? Because whatever their, you know, limitations, it's clear that that's like a current thread. They had an adventurous spirit together. They had kind of a pioneering attitude. My dad was entrepreneurial growing up. My mom very well would have been as well if she wasn't, you know, like dedicated to being a mom, and she's like a substitute teacher, and she's an artist and like that. But anyway, it's like I was reflecting on that, like they built that into like a full house that I remember growing up in the deep in the redwoods. That now when I was there, just as an aside, I was like, oh, I wonder what, you know, this house estimated value is. And it was like 1.4 million for like a relatively small, you know, cabin home in the woods, maybe like 3-bedroom, 2-bath or something like that. Anyway, that's the Bay Area for you. And so like grew up there and was exposed to Bay Area, Silicon Valley kind of like culture. My dad's company was in the tech of his age, which was first two-way radio and car phones, and they would do car phone installations like in limousines and such. And then car phones branched to the next big thing. Like when my brother and I started working at his place in the summer, it was pagers. And we'd work with Jose in the back office, and we'd be, you know, soldering in new crystals, repairing pagers and stuff. And this is when you actually like repaired things, right? You didn't just like, oh, it's broken, get the next one. Like, so that was that. And then cell phones, of course, that was the next. My dad would talk about, it's like, oh, there's going to be this thing where you can, like, these phones, you'll be able to put them in your pocket. And, you know, so like there for the innovation of that. And they were like one of the early Motorola distributors before the Sprints and the Verizons and AT&Ts, you know, took that space all over as major telecoms. Anyway, so I like had that kind of exposure to tech and telecom and like that, and my dad's interest in those things. But my first real like passion was actually around consciousness. I'd gotten back from being a foreign exchange student in Argentina in high school with the American Field Service. And you kind of come back from a big mind and perspective expanding experience like that back to my senior year in high school at Nevada Union. And it was kind of like, all right, well, this is fun. You know, like high school is cool and there were cool people to meet, but it's like, all right, what else can you show me? And I got exposed to a couple of books. One was called The Secret Life of Plants. And so I started learning
That's a cool book.
about plant consciousness and experiments done on that. And then Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. And I started getting experiment, and that just turned me on so big to get a feeling for like, okay, wait, like what else is going on beneath the surface here? And so like after high school, trying to figure out what's next, I had gotten that exposure to Indian consciousness and religion and philosophy and like that. And it's just like interesting to me. And I felt like, well, this seems like the most kind of relevant humaning thing I could explore next. And Dr. Mark Halpern at the time was just like a few years into having created the California College of Ayurveda, which now has like a major building on Zion there and still like it's like one of the major Ayurveda schools in the country. But I got introduced to a graduate there and I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. Started exploring Ayurvedic philosophy and graduated from that place while I was getting some degree credits at Sierra College. And that led to going off to India. And so Sarah, my partner at that time, and I went off to India. We conceived Ethan, our first son there, and came back, you know, and raised the boys here and such. So I had to kind of figure out what is I going to do. And so obviously I had the Ayurveda training. And so I started an Ayurveda practice and helped the school keep growing. And then got into, you know, various like sales jobs, learned marketing, learned various things, brought that stuff back around kind of full circle to Ayurveda and created like another business around that, which was a practice management model called Grow Your Ayurvedic Business and Everyday Ayurveda. And I sold that to a firm out of India, New Delhi, and consulted with them for a while. And like just gave me exposure to that part of India as well, which is like, you know, India is all like up and to the right. Like they're kind of one of the hidden superpowers that's not on the map as well as we should think of them. And they're also quite important because they're ones that might actually carry forward like a more functioning democracy as ours starts to fall apart. So anyway, they're an interesting one to watch. But along the way, just various jobs where like I worked in the sustainable business community for actually another boutique telecom, Better World Telecom at that point, and got exposure to venture philanthropy and VCs, learned about fundraising. And from the proceeds of my business sale, Everyday Ayurveda, to transformative learning out of New Delhi, I was kind of looking at like, oh, well, what should I do with some of these proceeds? And I'd just been hearing, you know, I was a little late to the party. This was like late 2016, early 2017, like learning about crypto. And so started learning about, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum and like that, and started doing like some investing and learning about that space. And I just got so turned on by what was going to be possible with decentralization, the idea of removing unnecessary middlemen. And that just got my mind going on to all sorts of like exciting applications and future visioning, like things that are now possible because of what crypto enables. It basically created like a new frontier. So we don't have to reform the stuff that all these legacy systems, we just can go out and create brand new, better ones that people can peacefully exit into, rather than having to do like head-to-head combat with legacy dinosaur systems that are just kind of slowly crumbling and falling apart. So I'm super excited, and I fly the Ethereum flag at my house because that's like, as far as any flag that I'm going to represent, that's what I'm most interested in is human coordination across boundaries, across you know, limiting anything that kind of expands human capacity and consciousness. I'm typically interested in it. And obviously in our time and place, most of that centers around technological innovation. So being able to be a part of a local tech company and push that forward as like a real harmony with me and who I am, and also allows me to continue to be very entrepreneurial and continue to innovate and push things forward. Not only because of the structure of our team and the founders, but because of the space that we're in itself, which is technology, which, as we were talking about, is only continually accelerating and always gives us something new to kind of be aware of.
I mean, that's a wild progression of subjects to be working in. Wild, man. So I think one of the ideas that you touched on that I loved the most was this ability to, instead of constantly having to fight those legacy systems, just create something entirely new. And
Yeah,
I think that's such a cool idea.
I love Balaji Srinivasan, one of my favorite thinkers ever. And he, in this last year, I've been following and waiting for the release of his book called The Network State, and it's free online at thenetworkstate.com, kind of more of like a book app, like a living book. It's for sale on Amazon or whatever as well, but it's free as like a living book on thenetworkstate.com. And the whole concept of what is a network state is a highly aligned online community that is able to have coordinated action, like actually do things and build things. And all right, so that's like the first important piece of it. And then it's able to actually then crowdfund its own territory and eventually get diplomatic recognition from other existing nation states.
Wild.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's, it's an interesting approach to think about how we form community and and how out of that community, it's like, was there civilization first or was the community first? And there was community first. So seeing all the new ways to build community, we're going to be seeing new civilizations coming out of it.
Yeah, and so like the 90s opened up a new frontier. Like most of the territory, physical land, was all spoken for. But when in the early 90s, when they opened up the internet to commercial interest, now everybody could be a part of it. And it wasn't just for academic and military and, what to do in the event of nuclear war. And like, that's where it started, right? But, and so that became a new interesting chapter where now, like before that, your community was like, well, who do you live around? Right. Yeah. And now that's still part of community, but it's more digital first, physical second. Like we were talking about with meetings, it's more like you're more closely aligned with your digital community. And you may, in a lot of cases, in a lot of parts of the world, you may never even meet or know your next door neighbor.
I mean, what's so interesting to me with that idea of, are you closer to your digital community or are you closer to your physical neighbors, is I've got some new neighbors and they found me on Instagram before we ever even said hello. Mm-hmm. and a week or two later, when I finally meet them out at the trash cans, it's like, oh, I know so much about you already. So it's really breaking down those barriers, and it's cool to see how those worlds, it's like there's the digital world, there's the physical world, and they are complementary. They're not contradictory. They're not in opposition. It's how can one reinforce the other? And
it's just there's such a rapidly changing dynamic around it. Like, what is most of my life? Most of my life is this. I'm looking at a screen and I'm talking with people all over the world, speaking a common language of business, right, and technology. And I may know I know all of my neighbors. In fact, I love my neighbors and I love my neighborhood. But the amount of that I have to do with them on a day-to-day, it comes down to the practical and then some level of the social. And but physical is then now like the premium, right? Whereas like digital is the standard.
That's both true and weird. Like 4 years ago, that would have been a, nah, no, you're crazy. Now it's like, well, yeah, it's the standard is this. And that, I think that's a good transition point to, we're talking digitally. So, this isn't the premium. We're not a rock band in your living room. We're here to talk about business. So that was a fascinating journey, and I think really illustrates that you never know how someone got into the field they're in. It can be a circuitous path. It doesn't have to be well, I got my bachelor's in coding. I've been coding.
Mm-hmm.
You can explore what interests you and have it still be a part of what you do in the business world, which
Yeah.
is, I think, a real important reminder. You're going to be much more successful if you're passionate about what you're doing than if you're not. So find that joy in what you do. And now, again, I think one of the reasons I love having you on is a lot about stuff I know very little about. So when I approached you asking about, topics to discuss, you talked about workflow automations and framework and strategies, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on things that I should probably know more about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so, we know this general trend that's happening with the idea of automation. Automation applies to, like, very broadly to so many different things. Like, we know robots are going to eat everything. AI is going to eat everything. Like, we know, okay, that's where we're headed. Great. We'll cross each of those bridges as we need to with all those rapid changes, self-driving, etc. What's going to be left for the humans to do? Okay, great. So we bring it down to, like, okay, business right now, and how does automation apply to a business? Not necessarily in terms of robotics, although that's going to apply to a lot of them, but basic workflow automation. What can software be doing? So there are like three, let me kind of put together like kind of three frameworks or concepts and how they fit together. So the first would be something that's like a basic marketing, especially came out of the digital marketing world, called customer value optimization, which is a way to look at a business's sort of incoming revenue and say, hey, there are three ways to increase your revenue. You can either get more customers, you can increase the average transaction value per customer, or you can get customers buying more frequently, having more transactions. All right. So customer value optimization is just that simple. You can always look at a business and you can look at it through those three lenses, and you could say, okay, what are the things we could do to help you get more customers? What are the things we could do to help increase the average transaction value of each customer? And so each one of these has, like, endless exploration that you could do, but it's a nice framework to start with. And then finally, how could we get customers coming back or purchasing more frequently?
I mean, it's one of those things that, it's so nice looking at it in the framework where you actually structure your thinking, because these are things everyone's familiar with,
Yeah.
the add-ons in the shopping cart when you're almost done, and it's like, you're buying glasses, do you want a case?
Yes, that's increasing the average transaction value.
And particularly the follow-up email that you get of, hey, hope you like this, we've also got this now available, where you're reaching out, you're trying to get more sales from that one customer. So the big challenge, I feel, though, with everyone is always getting more customers. That's, I feel like, one of those, if you've got ones that are going to stick through, you're raising prices or selling to them more, it's how do you get new people? How do you get that your product in front of different eyeballs?
Exactly. Yeah, because getting new customers usually costs the most.
Yeah.
Increasing the average transaction value per customer, right? So anyway, it's a lens to look through where you can start exploring, like, oh, I hadn't looked at my business through that lens. Let's see what new insights come about through that. And it doesn't even have to be digital. You can just think about, like, okay, like, what's everything we're doing? How are we currently getting customers? Like, that is a place where a lot of people's mind go to, how do we get more customers? But if you think about these other two, you're like, well, gosh, if we could increase the average transaction value and get more repeat purchases from our existing ones, maybe we don't even need so many new customers. So the point being, it's like, okay, it's a lens to look through, and you get insights and you get understanding by asking those questions, right? New ideas. Yeah. All right, so that's framework number one. The next would be like a business development framework, where you look at kind of 6 parts of a business that's growing. And if a business is growing, then it's typically going to be constantly breaking one of these 6 areas as it scales. So what are those 6 areas? So the first would be your lead capture, capturing the actual leads, right? The prospective customers. The second would be lead nurture, nurturing those prospective customers into sales opportunities. The third would be the actual sales process, like transforming that prospective customer into an actual customer that's paying money, right? That's like the main transformation we're looking for. Then the service delivery, what the products or service delivery. Now that you've made the sale, how do you roll it out? How do you give whatever you've sold? And then how do you collect payment on it? Your invoicing and your payment system. And then finally, what's your follow-up? What's your Ascension process? All right, so that would be like a complete customer movement, right? All the way from lead capture all the way through to follow-up. That's like the full arc. So that's another great like lens to look through. And you can kind of say, okay, out of those 6 areas, what's like broken for us right now? And so let's say it's lead, like, oh, we need more customers. We need to generate more leads. Okay, great. So then we fix lead capture. Now you've got all these leads coming in. All right, great. One thing that could happen is like, oh, we weren't used to getting all those leads. Now we're losing track of them. Okay, so then you broke lead nurture. So now you've got a system that you need to better organize how you're taking these leads in and moving them into sales opportunities. Okay, we like ran out of, like, we can't even get back to all these sales opportunities. We need to like hire or do something or audit, right? So then you break sales. Okay, great. We fix sales. Now, oh crap, we don't have like the manpower to fulfill on the sales we're delivering. Okay, great. So now you've got to fix service delivery and you have to scale that out. Great, we did that, but we weren't ever used to dealing with this much revenue. Like our books aren't equipped for this. Okay, you broke your payment system and your invoicing. All right, great, you fixed that. It's like, all right, but what about all these customers? Like we're just constantly fielding all the new incoming. We lost track of the people we've already brought on board. Oh, so you broke your follow-up and you broke your Ascension, right? All of these opportunities to add further value to your existing customer base or to be getting referrals from them or, like that, right? So you can kind of get the picture that each time you fix something, great. As long as you're growing, though, it's healthy. If you're growing, you should be constantly breaking some part of this. If you're not, then you're kind of static. Like, all right, you may be sustained, but you're not growing, right? So if you're not breaking one of those 6 areas, then you're probably not growing. And it probably means that the area that's actually broken is the beginning of that, your lead capture.
This is a awesome framework. I'm listening to you talk and thinking about, I sell my album, I sell my shows, and it's like, okay, where in this am I failing? And it's like, okay, I think the lead capture and lead nurture, like you said, if you're not delivering further on, it could be just that start. You need to transfer that lead capture into lead nurture. And the whole time we're talking, thinking, I need to work on that lead nurture.
Mm-hmm. And so then a lot of times people are then like scared to grow because whether they know it consciously or not, it's a feeling of like, okay, I know if I actually ramp this thing up, like there's going to be all these other new mo money, mo problems sort of thing. It's going to happen, right? Like, oh, great. What else am I going to have to figure out that I don't know, or what's that like? So there can be like people can be reticent, especially the more like cautious they are to expand, right? That like, what else is going to come if I actually ramp this up? what are the impacts it's going to have? All right, so those are two super cool frameworks: customer value optimization and this like business development framework to look through, to ask questions, and a lens to look through to assess, to help consult, like that. So then the third thing we like to layer into that now is like, great, yeah, that is a real thing. And so unless we're going to put you in a position where, like, if you're doing all these things manually and trying to keep up with it, yeah, it is going to become, your business is going to become more of a headache as you grow. So our only really shot out of that, and also it's going to either that, or it's just going to keep costing you more and more, because you're going to have to keep on hiring to meet those needs. And then you're going to lose some of your nimbleness, you're going to lose some of your efficiency, you're going to gain the bulk. Like, employees cost a lot of money, right? And so if you're going to do a hire, you need to make sure like that's going to be, you're going to get a return on investment. And that's always a risk as a business owner, like to make a new hire, it's not the right person, like you don't have the right training in place for them. Like, all that stuff is important and should be systematized. But the more of that that's built ahead of time, as you solve lead capture, the more like the less friction you're going to experience as you attempt this scaling, right? So that's where workflow automations come in. When you look at lead capture and you say, okay, well, how's that happening for a business currently? If they haven't ventured very deep into digital, if they don't have much online presence, then most will say, I get it from word of mouth, right? I've been in the community for a while, people know me, whatever, right? I get it through word of mouth. And that's like foundation level, and that's great. But as you start to go digital, then you start to have these other ways that you can now capture leads. And so a few things that I'm really into nowadays for how to do that. The most kind of tried and true one is something called a lead magnet. In other words, what's something of value or of interest that you can give your prospective customer or client, typically free, but it doesn't always have to be. It could be a low-cost thing. Sometimes we refer to that more as like a tripwire offer. Like, they might pay a little something, but anyway, so that can be a way that you get them into the sales process. So we'll talk about that when we get there. But anyway, lead capture, a lead magnet, something of value. It could be a report, a checklist, a little training, a video, a meeting with you, a consultation, a playbook, all sorts of things. Any reason that you would have to for somebody to say, here's something valuable in exchange for what? At least their email address, but sometimes more information than that: name, phone number, business, depending on the nature of it, right? So that's kind of the most basic, like, all right, you get a lead by giving them something free in exchange for contact information. Now, our favorite form of this nowadays is something that comes from Ryan Levesque and the Ask method, the quiz funnel. And the quiz funnel is wonderful because the quiz funnel allows you to give a very engaging, educational, like micro commitment way to generate leads. And so, like, we're running a quiz funnel right now called Quiz, What's Your Business's Online Reputation? Take our 60-second quiz to find out, right? And there's a countdown timer, and there's good copy around it, around like, why do so many businesses get like a steady stream of new customers and clients from Google and other local searchers, and others struggle to get any visibility at all, that kind of thing, right? And so, yes, like, it's all basically, the point is, take our quiz. It includes a customized report with your results and all that, and it's free, right? Compelling. But the other thing that's really compelling about it is that we're not asking for their name and email up front. We're engaging them in a small series of questions first. And so we're asking them, like, first, an easy thing like, hey, are you B2B or are you B2C? And secondly, do you tend to get more of your customers like all locally? Can you work with people anywhere, or is it a combination of both, right? Some things like easy questions to answer, but also data points for us for our segmentation. And then, when it comes to, then we're asking, in our case for that quiz, really just one question that's segmenting them into different outcomes. When it comes to your online reputation on Google, for example, right? Like, do you have the highest rating and the most reviews? compared to your competitors? Do you have like either, does somebody else have a higher rating or more reviews than you? Do you really not even like show up with local search? Or, do you have like a rating that's like less than 4 stars? Right. And so based on that, I have like 4 types that describes. And so at the end of that, based on how they answered those questions, it's going to funnel them to 4 different results pages. And one is for the clear choice, like, oh, cool. So you're what we call it. Well, the first thing is, hey, we've got your quiz results ready. Where should we send it to? Right. So that's the name in the email. So now they've like invested micro commitments along the way. And so that's a more effective lead capture. Not only because we've done micro commitments, so we get a higher conversion, but now it's customized and we can provide information that's more relevant to the situation they're in. So they get the free report and then they land on another page on the next thing that's like a video of me and it's talking about, hey, based on the little bit I know about you and how you've answered these questions, it looks like your business is what we call the clear choice. And that means, X, Y, Z. And your next step is this. And so for a clear choice, the main thing is, well, you're the clear choice. So really, your business is probably already getting a good number of calls and clicks from active local searchers, because that's how people make their decisions. They make it, they look for this and they make decisions based on ratings and reviews and overall reputation. So congratulations, like your main priority right now is maintaining that advantage, right? And so I'm leading all of them to the same solution in this case, which is our customer feedback system, but for different reasons. One needs to maintain, one needs to improve, one needs to establish, right? And one needs to repair. And so there are 4 different businesses. We're offering them the same solution, but for 4 different reasons. So I love a quiz funnel for that. I think it's probably the strongest like lead generation technique. It just takes a while to build it out. So the other cool thing you can do at the lead capture phase is now segment. So what kind of lead magnet does this person just sign up for? And I did that with Everyday Ayurveda back in the day as well, like based on an article that somebody was reading. If they were reading a certain article that was about digestion, I might embed a lead magnet in there that was about, learning, hey, read this free report we have on what can your poop tell you about your overall health, right? So the article is already about digestion. So I give them the poop lead magnet. But if it was another one about like breathing practices, then I would give them like, like which breathing practice is right for you, right? So, but regardless, whatever one they downloaded, now I know information about that. Like, what are they interested enough that they downloaded that? And then I could tailor my follow-up based on what they've shown interest in. So you can also do list segmentation at the follow-up or at the capture phase. So that's another automation that's really powerful, because now you're speaking more directly to an individual and the needs they've already demonstrated that they have, what they're already interested in. So you can think about that for just about any type of business. Like, do you only serve one type of customer, or do you serve like a variety of customers with different angles or different needs? Even if you only offer one thing, do people get it for different reasons, right? So that's important to think about at the capture phase, because obviously it then informs the nurture phase. What's the conversation you want to continue to have? So obviously the capture is now automated. Nobody had to go out there and pound the pavement or open doors or make cold calls. That all happened because of existing, whatever traffic strategies you're running, existing stuff into a machine that was automatically doing all of that to them. It was talking to them. It was giving them something informative, introducing them to your brand, capturing the lead, and entering them into your CRM, right? So all of that was workflow automation just at the capture phase.
I just love the idea too of by contacting these people that way, they're not seeing your marketing email as their first interaction with you. They're seeing it as, oh, that was that cool quiz that gave me some helpful ways of thinking about my business.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just really like that approach of you're listening to people, and that's one of the really most powerful elements of human psychology. We like to be heard. So
Yeah.
you're giving them a way to have their voice heard by you, while at the same time, you're setting yourself up for a great follow-up way to, nurture that lead. Love that.
Yeah, exactly. And so now they've segmented, something about them. And so now it's nurture, right? So what can nurture involve? Well, nurture may involve a few things. It may involve automation of just like email follow-up with different things that are there, like, okay, what else based on what they've said, what else do they need to know? Because maybe the next step in our process is, well, we need to have a sales conversation with them. And so part of that also may be, well, that triggers a task that goes on to a member of the team, like, hey, here's a new lead, you need to follow up with them within, the next 48 hours or whatever. Hey, I saw that you downloaded that report and you got that thing. Any questions we could answer for you about that? Oh, cool, yeah, about that. Well, the best way we can answer that question is in this next step, right? So you're consciously kind of guiding them to, okay, what's the next step to solve the problem? So the lead magnet is not there so much it's there to give like a Band-Aid and to give perspective on, there is a way to solve this problem. And here's what it is. It's a service that we offer. It's called the customer feedback system. Instead of you having to do all these things manually, we can deploy and customize a software for you that will do all these things for you, right? Great. So then you have the sales process. Now, the sales process could be entirely automated. It could be a sales letter, a sales video, the rest of that. That kind of stuff tends to work well for like lower dollar things, can typically, or e-commerce or whatever. You can sell things like that at a lower cost. Or if it's a direct search, like I bought this Mr. Cool thing online, the salesperson didn't have to sell it to me. I already knew what I wanted though, and I did an active search for it and I found it, and I got it. And it, it's like a $1,700 product. So you can sell more expensive things too, if it's very specific to something people are looking for. All right. So determining what is their optimal sales process and what pieces of it can and should be automated and whatnot. Is it going to be a webinar? Is it going to be on demand or live? Like, how are you going to do this? Does it need to be an actual call, like a Zoom or a phone call or something like that, right? Do they need to meet up with you in person? Whatever that is, it's fine. But the idea is, what are the parts of it that need to be in place so that the maximum number of people possible that are a good fit from that lead magnet can end up in the sales process. And then there's like the sales pipeline automation. Sometimes a sale isn't just as simple as like walk in and buy something. Sometimes it's a process, and you have to have an initial discussion, and you have to build out a proposal, and then you have to have follow-up and subsequent follow-ups with other decision makers and that kind of thing. Well, like a salesperson that's not organized is most definitely going to lose track of like, where were things in that process and who do I need to follow up with and when. So obviously that's like a built-in part to a CRM, a customer relationship management tool, is you want to have an organized sales pipeline. But there are a lot of pieces of that as you move the status and change them there, right? There might be things that people have to do manually that are the same every single time, that we could say like, oh, you're just doing that. Does that ever have any variance? How much variance does it have? Do we know like where those variables need to go based on that variance? Sounds like we could automate that whole thing, right? And they're like, oh, great. Well, you saved me like whatever, 20 hours a week by not having to now type up a custom proposal for everybody. I just know these are all the variables that change from time to time. If I collect those up front and put that into the CRM and then press go, well, now I can create like a Zap that connects them from the CRM to my proposal software, sends it off to them with all their information filled in, and great. Like, okay, yeah, you just saved me, an hour on each one of these, right? So that would be some automations around the sales process. Other cool things to think about with the sales process are like Tripwire offers, like smaller dollar offers that you could offer right on the back end of like an opt-in. So let's say you're like, somebody's got a problem, you give them like a Band-Aid, and then you say like, oh, and here's like a product that we like for this right away. It's $20 or whatever. or normally it's 100, but because you're a new subscriber on our list or whatever, it's like it's available to you right now for $30. So it could be a tripwire. Like you can automate a lot of that ascension in the sales through that as well.
And that sort of stuff is powerful. I have fallen for that time and time again. I've currently got a Showtime trial because they offered at the reduced rate.
Mhm.
So from a just human psychology perspective, I think that's a powerful tool to be using.
Totally. Yeah. I wanted to get, free trials are like that. I wanted to see the new Dexter. So I got the Showtime. And then I went through, and while I was on Showtime, I discovered Billions, and I was like, well, I'm into this show now. So exactly. So they got some membership for me out of that.
Well,
so then
and it can also be the sort of thing where if you're a subscription type service, you're doing that for the first 3 months. And then maybe someone remembers that they're subscribed at $10 a month instead of 99 cents. But it's just a powerful tool.
Yeah, it is. So when you're looking at a business, you're kind of thinking through these questions. And obviously, like anything you're selling, the value of it comes from actually providing value, providing a benefit or solving a problem. The point is just to make all of this stuff easier to consume, easier to sell, right? Less steps, less things overlooked, like fewer holes in the process. We know that even if somebody is awesome and super organized, if it's a human being, they likely have holes in their systems and things they forget, right? But if it's software, it's either turned on or turned off. And if it's turned on, it will keep on doing it over and over again. And if it's turned off, it won't, right? So we can rely on a software to keep on doing what it's supposed to do until there's a bug or a break or whatever, right? But that's the whole point of what we offer as a value is like, like we're going to build this stuff and we're going to make sure it keeps on working. And the value you're going to get on that is so much greater than the investment you're going to make. And it's going to save you all the cost of one, potentially having to do an unnecessary hire that may or may not work out, certainly not as well as the software will in terms of consistency, like that. So then after the sales process and all those, another one I like is like periodic deep dive surveys, which are basically just what else should we be selling you? But it takes the form of, what is your biggest challenge with topic right now? What's your single biggest challenge with topic right now? Open-ended, please be as detailed and specific as possible. Constantly just collecting information back from clients and customers around, hey, basically, what else should we be selling you? And then service delivery. One of the big automations we like with service delivery is, well, what are the things that people like? What's your process? What are the steps people have to go through with their service delivery? What kind of things could we build templates around? Could we build jot forms around? Could we, whatever, like custom forms that just go right into your CRM that right now take like back and forth phone calls and the rest of that? Like, where are the bottlenecks in your service delivery that we could automate out? And then another one I like is like having a customer portal. Like give them a login, let them see their billing obviously any corporation you deal with, you have a place where you log in and you can answer as many questions as possible. Most of them you can answer on your own. And then if it really comes down to it, you submit a support ticket. But again, that hopefully is organized, or you put in a call and you wait in the queue, and however that goes.
One of those just awesome things I feel like that's almost the step most businesses start by focusing on. It's how do we get this thing that we made into people's hands?
Right.
But, if you're a business and you're 3-4 years deep in, it could have been several years since you even really thought about how you're doing that. So,
and let's just think about like that part breaking. Let's say, okay, great, this business is taking off. they had just like, they had their first run, they sold 10 million units. Oh, but gosh, they didn't have any system in place for their like customer support and addressing tickets and issues. And now they're just trying to, their phone is just ringing off the hook. So they had a meteoric rise and there's some issue with it. And instead of being able to like address it in a coordinated fashion, it's like, oh, great. Now their reputation just tanked because they couldn't address the issues, right? So again, each step along the way that we can solve one of these things, it's going to mean that we can increase the top of the funnel here, and we've got cushion to absorb the impact and the scale. So service delivery, interesting things to think about there. Like, okay, you're basically just mapping out how does this go, and what are all the parts that are like consistent, or at least the variables could be entered and known, and what parts of it are like common questions that people are right now taking up a person's time that again, software could solve for, like answer for them faster. So potentially improving the customer experience and also freeing up you from, tasks that don't need to be done by a human as much of the time. So that's service delivery. Then you've got your invoicing and payments, right? What's that about? That's just basically about being able to manage billing, collections, payment methods, recurring payments, all that effectively. Like if people don't pay you right now, are you having to go hunt them down? Or if their credit card is that they had on file now like doesn't run effectively? One, that takes a person to do it, but secondly, like it's like one of the least enjoyable tasks for a person to do is to go hit up a customer for money on a missed payment. And even if it's like relatively smooth, there's like an inherent sense of friction. And now they associate like, oh, this person is like taking my money, even though they're happy, like, okay, they're paying for a service, they know that they ordered and they appreciate whatever, there can still be a little slice of that, right? Whereas if a software is doing it in an automated way, right, then you've saved that person's resources, the morale of having to like go through the collections process, and hopefully just made it easier for the customer to do the update. You didn't have to do phone tag, you didn't have to whatever, right? You didn't have to email back and forth, whatever awkwardness was involved in that process, just like systematized, right?
I just love the idea of being able to outsource irritation at billing issues to computers. It's one of the greatest things we can blame them for.
So there's like all sorts of things to think through with that, but it's a process and it's a mindset. The question that's going on always is like, what else could we be taking off our plates? Like, what else could software be doing for us that right now we're doing that it's not like high skill. It's not, but it's basically, it's just eating up people's time and energy. And it's taking away from their A work, whatever their real contribution stuff would be. And so finally you have your follow-up and Ascension process. And so one of the key ones for that obviously is your customer feedback process, a way that you're automatically asking everybody you've done business with, how'd that go? Would you recommend us to others? Intercepting, like capturing negative reviews so they don't happen publicly. So if somebody's not happy with something, being able to get that feedback and address it so it doesn't go public. And if somebody is happy, asking them multiple times to make it public, right? Building up your online reputation, automate that process, automate the leveraging of those reviews on your website and on your social so that they're further supporting your conversion on the front end, that people feel more and more comfortable and trust to do business with you because, great, you've got hundreds of all of these positive reviews and they can see them right there. They're broadcasted, streaming in real time on your site. What else is great is like referrals. What reasons you would give people to refer other people. And then of course, Ascension and repeat purchases. Like you were saying, hey, you bought this from us before. How about this thing next? Right? It seemed like this is usually like the next step after you get this, and just bringing them back into that that process again. You're basically recapturing, re-nurturing, reselling to all of that.
And referrals, I think, are one of those really powerful tools that if you can automate it and make it so, like I go to a vet and my neighbors got a great deal because they referred me. And if you can automate that sort of system where, you go into the office, you say, hey, this person sent me, and they can easily give that person that credit, that's going to increase their incentive to come back and do more business. Like let's say they give them a $50 discount. That's great. They're going to come back. They're going to spend that. They're still going to get more services. So
yeah,
love referrals.
They're tried and true practices and constant innovation and subtlety and like infinite rabbit holes you could go down on all of these. The main concept I want to like convey here is a mindset one around automation. So kind of two frameworks really in a mindset. So framework one, again, was customer value optimization, asking those 3 questions: more customers, average transaction value increase, more repeat transactions. Business development, like looking at each part, what needs attention next, or what have we not attended to, right? Lead capture, lead nurture, sales, delivery, service delivery, invoicing and payments, and follow-up and Ascension. And then finally, automation. Like what could we have software doing that would be more consistent, better, take work off of humans' plates and the rest of that. So all 3 of those, fantastic. And I really kind of consider all those to be foundational, because you can deal with all of that before you really invest in increasing your traffic or your visibility. Because then every dollar or minute or a slice of energy that you use in going after active searchers or passive prospects after that, you're going to get a higher return on it now.
It's just such an excellent framework to think about, because before you go out there and spend money on an ad campaign, whether you're buying Google ads, whether you're doing Facebook, however you're doing it, if your lead nurture and actual sales process is broken, you just wasted that money. If you have no ability to actually deliver your service, you've just wasted your money. So just having the idea of, okay, this is all holistic, which is, I think, kind of getting back to your whole origin story of, you got into this in a very different way. And I think you're bringing that holistic mentality that you've probably had your whole life to the business of tech.
Exploring systems, how do things fit together? And I do very much enjoy that in the realm of consciousness and the human experiment as well. Like how do everybody's perspectives and potentials like fit together into this big organism called the human being, like this big experiment that we're all a part of. But yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the numbers of it, like just kind of say, okay, 100 people go to a website, for example. If the only next step for them is, either buy our product or call us, right? Then, and there wasn't like a lead capture or a lead nurture ahead of that, like that's the only capture that they have, and then the nurture is the phone call. Maybe one out of, let's say 1 out of 100 end up going on to becoming that lead, and then however many leads they need to get the customer. But if you've integrated, like especially multiple different lead magnets based on the page somebody's on, or a blog topic or whatever, and now you've given them something hyper relevant to whatever they actually are like consuming right then, you maybe you get out of that 100 people, instead of there just being the one that was ready to take action because it was such a big, they had to be very convinced, like, yeah, I'm ready to actually get on the phone and like make something happen here. Now maybe 20 people are ready to take like some action because there was some curiosity or some interest. They weren't really like, they wanted, they were exploring some topic, but they weren't like in a buying mode yet, right? They weren't ready to make that phone call. And the otherwise would have left and forgotten that they ever even went to the site. But now, because it's like, oh, well, that actually seems like an interesting lead magnet. Great. What got to happen? Yes, you got to capture it, but you also provided education. You provided value up front. You basically put money in the bank there. And so now 20 of those ended up becoming leads instead of one. And so, yeah, if you were running pay-per-click traffic to that site and you were paying, $5 per click, and you needed, 10 clicks to, or you needed 100 clicks to get that one. So you paid 500 for one lead, but now you paid 500 for 20 leads.
That I just love having you on. You follow just such streams of logic that always come together in interesting ways, and I think that's a great example where you have to think about every step, and you took us through a whole bunch of steps tonight. We are getting a little bit out of time, and I was going to ask you to sum things up, but you pretty much just did it of your own volition. Gave us a perfect case example of why every step counts, right? So, any additional closing thoughts other than the wildly succinct one you just did?
Yeah, we'll keep on doing this while we require humans to do it until AI and robots take us over.
And then hopefully we'll have more time to do the premium person-in-persons activities.
We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. I'm inherently optimistic, and I will make another pitch for Balaji's book, The Network State, for anybody who's interested in kind of future thinking and sort of actively participating in the next like wave of consciousness that's just much more inspiring than trying to like battle against archaic stuff that's just, causing conflict and division and like that.
Awesome, man. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you. I'm David Clark Carroll with the Nevada County Tech Connection. I've been having my mind absolutely blown talking with Jacob Griscom on. We went a lot of places tonight, but you also had some very, very useful advice for businesses thinking about how to turn potential leads into sales and thinking about how to approach their whole thing. If you just tuned in, rewind, because he's got some really useful information. Thanks so much, folks.